Move the question be now put.
I'll hear from Fletcher Tabuto on his fourth call.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to touch on one of the issues raised in the CW 55BA tertiary education institutions and subsidiaries. It talks specifically about those who have control over an institution, and this is where it gets confusing, and this is where the Labour Party had a lot to say. It kind of contradicts itself, and I'd just raise this with the Minister, where no person other than a tertiary education institution with some control over the company is able to direct or divert. So it's only got some control, but then it's able to direct or divert, which raises some of the questions around the eligibility of a controller of an institution and about what they're entitled to do in terms of accessing those funds, diverting those funds, and that particular issue, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, my primary purpose of this first call for the evening was on section 71, amendment withdrawals from foreign superannuation schemes. Mr. Chairman, you can imagine New Zealand First gets many questions from constituents on superannuation, and and it's obviously no surprise to my friends around me in the House. But actually, I have to admit, the clause goes on for 4 pages of the bill, and so my call at this point of the evening is to actually ask for some explanation from the Minister. I have to admit I wasn't on the Select Committee, was not part of the debrief, but I think when you look at some of the terminology and some of the wording used, Mr. Chairman, I think you'll find that you will get these unintended consequences that New Zealand First speaks so often about when we are referring to remedial matters from the national government. I'll just use a few examples. So clause 189 corrects an oversight around the omission of the phrase educational bursary within MB 13 Part 2F in the Income Tax Act 2007. So the reality there, it was always intended to be both an educational scholarship, and the educational bursaries were supposed to be included from that calculation, and yet here we are some nearly 10 years later amending the legislation. The other one, which has just been spoken to eloquently and with great knowledge, was in clause 81 around the commencement date. Yeah, bit of biasly. Commencement date for accommodation provisions applying to ministers of religion. So I think when you look at the legislation, we have to acknowledge that the reason it's in here is because the incorrect date was inadvertently changed in the Annual Rates Employees Allowance Remedial Matters Act 2014. So it was these provisions would apply from 1st of July 2013 and not April 15 as currently written in the Act. So here we are now fixing it up. I'll come to it later on in the piece because it's not the appropriate part of the debate tonight to talk to it, but part 4, supplementary order paper 129, I think it was, yes, 129, is an example of just what it is that the public needs to be wary of, Mr. Chairman. We have so much to work through here, and mistakes are already being made. I acknowledge the government's trying to rectify them at the moment, but the reality is this is a large piece of work, and the debate needs to be extensive, and I think when I come to that part, that supplementary order paper, I think we need to acknowledge that the work hasn't been done, and we're going to need to look at it again. Just to finish off in the time that I have, sir, the foreign superannuation, this is back to section 71, 3A. A foreign superannuation withdrawal is not income of the person under subsection 2D if the benefit isn't is an interest of the person in the scheme that is withdrawn on the death of a person under a relationship agreement arising from the event.
Stuart Smith.